Hi, folks. So, this is sort of our weekly overview. It is our weekly overview, but there are going to be 3 videos at least coming out this week. There are going to be 3 videos coming out this week. If I'm able to do more, then I will do more. But there needs to be this video today that is a mixture of a weekly overview. And I have a couple of points I want to remind you of with regard to Mercury retrograde. Mercury went retrograde yesterday. And of course, I think the last video I did had some more thoughts on it. So there are a couple of videos already out there on Mercury retrograde that you're welcome to look at. I want to remind you of a couple of things related to the eclipses. And of course, the 2 transits aspects that are happening this week, sort of as a collective, as a global, not related to your individual charts, because I can't see your individual charts, but sort of general aspects in the sky that are occurring. One occurs tomorrow, which is Venus conjuncting Neptune in Pisces, and the other is, and by tomorrow I mean April the 3rd Pacific time, and on April the 4th Pacific time, the Sun conjuncts the North Node, as we would expect it to do around this time, because of course we're smack dab in the middle of 2 eclipses. And so outside of the 2 aspects and these reminders regarding the eclipses and Mercury retrograde, I want to give you the third and final thing I want to mention, and let me just start with this, is we are now in the week before the solar eclipse, the new moon solar eclipse. So as we get to the new moon solar eclipse is on Monday, April the 8th Pacific time. So this means that as we head towards this weekend, expect the 48, 72 hours before a new moon to have their traditional exhaustion, sadness, depression, energy depletion, the wave having pulled back completely from the shore. And once the new moon solar eclipse happens, of course, it's going to move forward. Starting next week, at least in the Pisces part of the chart, and during the rest of April, Mars is going to play a bigger role. And I'll touch on some of that in this video, in today's video, but we're going to have to talk more about that next week. With the new moon solar eclipse, a couple of days after that, Mars conjuncts Saturn in Pisces. So that's an important aspect that's imprinted onto this eclipse. And as I said, I will give you a heads up on that in this video in a few minutes. But the first thing I want to mention is, and also keep in mind and remember that the full moon lunar eclipse that we had in Libra on the 25th of March is absolutely in conversation with this new moon solar eclipse on April the 8th. There's a connection between the two. It is a full moon in Libra corresponds to a new moon in Aries, whichever comes first. Whether it's the new moon in Aries that comes first and the full moon in Libra follows 2 weeks later, or it's the full moon that follows first, as it is this year, and 2 weeks later the new moon in Aries occurs. So the 3 videos that have to be done this week, of course, are this one. I want to do a video tomorrow about the Sun conjuncting the North Node, and then I want to do a video as the week progresses on that new moon solar eclipse in Aries. Okay? And if there's time to do some more, we will. Now, as far as the second item, so the first thing was just to talk about the fact that expect as this week progresses to have the traditional slowdown of energy. Yes, we're during eclipse season, and I'll come to the reminders about that in a second. And yes, the energies are tumultuous and stressful and anxiety-provoking and exciting. And there's the idea of doors opening and shutting, and all those eclipsey things are there. But the moon is going to get darker and darker, and our emotional and intuitive light is going to start to dim by the time we get to Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then on Monday, we have the new moon solar eclipse, and the wind starts to get behind our sails again, and the wave starts to move towards the shore. 2 weeks from the new moon, we have the full moon. So when I like to say proverbially that the wave crashes to the shore and gathers momentum. So we're sort of in this part where the wave is starting to pull back more and more. And by the time we get to Friday, but especially Saturday and Sunday, expect to expect to curl up in bed and watch Netflix or whatever it is that you choose to, however you're going to be managing that, depending on what's going on for you. With the eclipses around, I can't promise you that it's going to be an uneventful week, but just have a sense of where things are at energetically, and the 48 hours, especially prior to a new moon, can seem rather bleak mood-wise. And if you're sensitive to mood and sensitive to feeling depressed, sensitive to feeling sad and heavy or hopeless, then just give it a chance. Always, with every new moon, give a chance for the new moon to occur, and just give it a little bit of time and see if the optimism and the growing moon doesn't just kind of carry you along with it. Okay, so that's the first thing I wanted to mention. The second thing are the reminders about Mercury retrograde and the eclipses. With the eclipses, again, keep in mind that mortality, other people's mortality, people passing on, news about people passing on, situations related to mortality, your own or other people, it can become more present. Not unusual during eclipses to be hearing about people transitioning more, or so just people and situations getting eclipsed and in and out of our lives. So just have a sense of that. For me, it's not like, it's not like people don't transition at other times, but the frequency of it just kind of increases. It's like this like the veil thins, So there's that aspect of it. And of course, with the eclipses, and with eclipses where Mercury goes retrograde yesterday, smack dab in the middle of those two eclipses, there's this sense, just a friendly reminder in the larger scheme of things, that we are waiting for these eclipses and the Mercury retrograde to reveal to us, for those people who have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, probably during this Mercury retrograde between April 1st to 25th, make you more decisive and clearer about how you want to move forward as we head into May. And for those of us who have Mercury direct in our birth chart, probably by the time we're spit out of Mercury retrograde and the eclipses, by around, as we get to about April 27th, 28th, and into early May, we may have a clearer and better sense of how we are moving forward. The tarot card for April is the Hanged Man, and as you can see, he is hanging by his foot. The crown chakra is illuminated. He either has been put there by someone or by a situation or by fate, or has somehow put himself there. It's a suspension. Hands are held behind his back tied. It feels, whether it's voluntary or whether it is, it's a kind of putting yourself in observation mode, choosing to see things from a different vantage point. And observing and waiting for the aha moment to hit before taking action. There's something, it's like, and of course it's the 12th card of the major arcana, and it's not true that each of the cards by number up to 12 mirror or map to the 12 houses, but it's interesting. For example, the Hermit is number 9 with the 9th house. The Wheel of Fortune is with the 10th house. There is a kind of if we think about it, sometimes it's something that can only be pushed so far. But there is something about having our own hands at the wheel, but understanding that during April the universe will take the wheel. Excuse me. And we are wanting Spirit, the universe, the eclipses, Mercury retrograde, to make our path forward clear to us by opening doors, closing doors, giving us opportunities, crossroads, choices. And with the Mercury retrograde, as I said in the last video, look to the facts and the data. I know that seems counter because often with Mercury retrograde, we feel that we should just kind of, but no, remember with Mercury retrograde, we always say, make sure the details are accounted for. If you're going back, and remember, I always say with Mercury retrograde, yes, yesterday, April the 1st, I tried to do the weekly videos on Mondays. I'm not always successful. But yesterday, I actually had to travel somewhere to take care of something. And I thought I would be smart because Mercury was going retrograde, and I thought I would take the train. And because I thought, well, what could possibly go wrong there? And as luck would have it, we were literally on the platform, heard the announcement that the train was going to be there in 5 minutes, and it didn't come. And there was no one to explain. There was a boulder on a track, and all the trains were delayed. And the only way to know this was to actually go onto the website and figure out what was going on. And no announcements were made. It was the most ridiculous thing. And the trains were delayed all day. And it was one of those classic Mercury retrograde setups. So then, you informed whoever you needed to inform that you would be running late and you would still be on your way and blah, 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 blah. And everybody's like, okay, fine. But then any estimates that were given would just keep it was one of those kind of typical Mercury retrograde. Oh, it says I should be there in 2.5 hours time. Oh, we're stopped and it's going to be this. Oh, I'm just 2 stops away and it should be this. Oh, but we're slowing down because it was just like, oh my God. So those kinds of logistical craziness. But it was not without its miracles too, because the return that I had booked, given the timing of it, was I'd actually picked a train that was not all that convenient. But because all the trains were delayed, the train that I ended up catching on the way back brought me back to the station closest to where I live. It was one of those kind of miracle things where, and the trains were carrying 3 times the amount of passengers. Everything worked out, but it was just bananas, right? So April 1st, April 11th, when the retrograde Mercury conjuncts the Sun, and April the 25th, when Mercury goes direct, are around the times when these kind of classic Mercury retrograde snafus happen at their most intense. And of course, I thought, I'm being smart by taking something that's predictable, and a boulder on the tracks causing this kind of havoc all day on the day that Mercury goes retrograde. This is why, as I've said to you, I try to remain skeptical about what I do and what I say, but then you can't make this stuff up. Now, the other thing that I say about Mercury retrograde, which also for me at least is very, very clear, but I'm going to remind you, is that Mercury retrograde on a larger, more philosophical level, and I know I'm repeating myself, brings visibility to something that has been in our blind spot. And it can also be something that we haven't wanted to see completely. But when Mercury goes retrograde, think to the conversations and communications that have occurred over the past 3, 4, 5 days. This may not resonate with everybody, but I'm surprised it does resonate for me. Again, this is one of these things where I say these things because I find them to be, a lot of what I say comes from, there's no substitute, if you're an astrologer, I think, for reading individual charts, for doing the work. Because it is that data that time and time and time and time and time and time and time again that gives you something that almost demands attention. And it's not so much the bookish stuff that we all lap up initially. And that is all over the place at this point in time. Do you go ancient? Do you go this? Do you go that? Do you go modern? Do you go 20th century? Do you follow this? Do you follow that? This resonates, that doesn't resonate. It's all over the place. The literature is there's so much of it, and it is all over the place. Ultimately, you've got to look for, and you don't have to look for it, you just have to do the work. and the statistical data will just demand your attention. It's as a result of that that I say 2 months after a solar eclipse, 2 months before a lunar eclipse, that's when you can really feel the eclipse. And it kind of makes sense because by that time, the sun, so the new moons and the full moons are going to be squaring the nodes, so they will be in that conversation. So you can see why, but it's not something that you pick up in books. And with Mercury retrograde, this idea of Mercury saying, hang on a second, I need to reverse because I need to reveal to you something that is in your blind spot. It's not clear to you. It could be something that you did not know. It could be something you've had an inkling about and you just need the proof and you need to see it for yourself. It could be something that needs to be cleaned up. It's like the windshields need to be cleaned. You need to have a clearer vision, a clearer sight onto certain things. And as I say to my clients, and as I've said to you, sometimes, more often than not, whatever it is that Mercury is trying to do is disappointing, which is why we're either in denial or it's been hidden for us from a reason. For a reason it wasn't clear to us. And it isn't that people are constantly trying to deceive us, but it's sometimes things are not clear. Sometimes things are not said. Sometimes you're expending energy, and sometimes opportunities come up. I live in LA, as you know, and this happens all the time, from an acting perspective, or from you audition for things, or you do things or whatever, and then you realize, oh, that person always had somebody else in mind in the first place. So, but there are rules and they're required to see everybody, and they probably did, and you do all this work, and it's just like, oh, and you thought maybe it's going to be this, and maybe this can happen with it. It's the same with a job interview. Why would they call me in 3 times if blah, 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 and then all of a sudden you're just like, oh. So and we're human, these plans and these castles that I was building in my mind, because you would. If someone has posted an application and they're expecting things to come in and you are excited about it, who can blame you for? But then this is where Mercury is just like, It's not that effort and that work and that visibility did not have its place, but it may not be what you think it is. And so then you've got to go back to the drawing board and figure out what you need to do with it. Sound familiar? I feel like I covered this territory, but I want to remind you of it as we're there now. And I want to remind you of it on April the 2nd, the day after Mercury has gone retrograde, because I want you to think back to the past 3 or 4 days and just see what has been coming up that is tightening the focus on things. And most importantly, I want to remind you, with the eclipses and Mercury retrograde, when we are looking for signs and when we are looking for the universe to give us a sense of direction, and when we're looking for the universe to confirm to us, remember this narrative that we've been talking about. For some of us, it's very clear that in July, August of 2023, we wanted to move to a certain direction. We were excited to move to a certain direction, and we were blocked from it till about the middle of February. And since the middle of February, now it's a question if I can move, but A, do I still want what I thought I wanted? B, does it need to be modified? It's kind of like A. But C, how am I actually going to make this transition? How long is this going to take? How do I get to all of a sudden the reality of the change is clearer? And it's like, oh, I can't just ditch everything and move in that direction. There's a transition to this. And what does that transition look like? And also keeping in mind that as we get to the second half of this year, we still have one more eclipse of release of Libra on October 2nd. So October 2nd, December 2nd may have similar themes of release that October 14th of 2023 and December 14th and January 24th of 24 and March 24th, 25th of 24 have had. So it could be a longer transition. It could, but we still need the universe to push us forward. And that's why the eclipses come in. And the eclipses are what close chapters, open chapters. The universe closes doors and keeps them shut and opens doors. And we're waiting for this process to continue during the month of April, particularly as it has to do with the Aries and the Taurus part of our chart, which is where the growth is and which is what is pulling us forward. So the reason to stay focused on factual data-driven things is so that it is normal often, and you've got to figure out how this resonates for you. I'm not talking to each of you individually looking at your chart, and I don't want to, it would really bother me, of course, if something that I said has caused you to make a choice that you ultimately are not happy with. So just take this in and figure out what is right for you, please, and what works best for you. But sometimes, as I've been saying to my clients, and I said, I think in my last video, sometimes we fake it till we make it kind of. Sometimes we think, well, I'm going to say yes to this and I'm going to figure it out as it goes along. You know, there is that philosophy of something's coming towards you, say yes to it and see how it goes. But there are times when something comes to us and we know it isn't instinctively the right thing. Or there are times when something comes to us and we're saying yes to it and going, am I digging myself in a hole because I really don't know how I'm going to get... The reason to look at the data, if you're trying to move from A to Z, or if you're at a crossroads, one of the things that the eclipses can do, and Mercury retrograde can do, is it can try and, as you are exploring various options, the eclipses, Mercury retrograde, try and narrow you down and get you to the door for you. So as you are looking at, and this is what I think we need to do, we need to be open to all possibilities, but we also need to let the universe give us the data to say, this is what both is going to feel right, and by the way, this is what these resources are for. And with critical transits, Jupiter entering the 2nd house, Jupiter transiting through the 10th house, those are really, and the eclipses, those are really door open, door closing kind of things. Those are really, during eclipses, during Mercury retrograde, pay attention to things like I'm looking to see whether I want to stay in this apartment or move, and then something happens that gives me like, is that a sign? Look to financial realities. Sometimes, because sometimes what the universe does is it will either restrict or provide in ways that make you think, oh, am I supposed to go through this door? Or I would love to go through this door, but the resources, if this was 4 weeks ago, I would have felt like I had the resources to do it, but all of a sudden I don't. And so, again, is this the universe kind of guiding me? Look to the facts and the data and what you have and what it will take. Look to the details. And then determine whether you want to fake it till you make it and figure it out as you go along, or whether you're going to let the details propel you in the right direction. And if we're looking at things like some sort of a crisis, financial restriction, or as I said, you're looking to see whether you should see something go and something comes in and it feels like a negative. It doesn't have to be, you'll know, it doesn't have to mean, oh, I'm looking to go, whether I should stay or whether I should go, and I ended up having a fight with my landlord, so that's a clear sign. That could be a clear sign, but let's take an easier example. Let's say, oh, I was expecting this money to come in and it is not, and so that's a clear sign I should go. But it could also be that the money not coming in is forcing you to take action in other arenas. To go, oh, I was expecting that, it didn't happen. Now I've got to go from 1st to 6th in these particular, with plan B or plan C or plan D, and get an action, because it is critically important for me to have this kind of financial baseline. These are ways in which the universe, or, well, I have these opportunities, and something happens where 4 of those to the best of your ability. You're showing up, you're doing your best, you're excited, but they don't for some reason work out, and but one thing works. That's the kind of, you're looking to the doors that open, doors that close, and you're trying to make sense. You're partnering with spirit as spirit is eclipsing things in and eclipsing things out, and Mercury retrograde is saying there's something and things that I need you to know and get clear about and accept. Okay, so that is the spirit and the energy of the time. So that by the time we're dealing with these fabulous new moons that are coming up, the new moon in Taurus conjuncting Uranus, the new moon in Gemini conjuncting Venus, after this new moon solar eclipse on April the 8th, conjuncting Chiron. I mean, the only fly in the ointment is Mercury's retrograde at that time, right? But as we get to May and June, we can really feel like, all right, this state of the doors are open, but I don't know how I'm going to get to where I want to get to, and I don't know what it is that I'm trying to move to, and it wouldn't surprise me already if you have an intuitive sense of what spirit is trying to tell you with regard to where you need to go. It wouldn't surprise me at all if with the energy of the time you're like, oh. But there's still things that have to be worked out. There's still questions. There's still a timeline. So just stay patient with April. And this does not mean that we do not show up to opportunity. This does not mean that we don't go to the interviews and don't apply for things and don't take action. The Hangman. You absolutely have to. If you are feeling like something has come up that has to be taken care of, financially, job-wise, serious, critical, this is what I'm saying, look to the data and take the actions you need to take. It could be spirit trying to propel you in the direction to do what you need to do in order to prepare for how you're going to move forward for the change that you need to make. It's not a time for paralysis, but it is a time to take the action and then put yourself on the tree, not literally. I want no reports of someone watching this channel and then tying themselves to a tree. Okay, I'm taking this image away. Just never know. Not literally. No one is suspending themselves upside down in any capacity from any tree or otherwise. But the bottom line is take the action, but you're really looking for Mercury and the eclipses to help you get clear on what is in your blind spot and help you get clear on what actions you need to take. It really is time to partner with spirit, and the eclipses are co-creation time. And so taking the action and then watching becomes the mode for determining and getting clues and signs for which direction I need to take and how I need to move forward, and what actions I need to take based on what the eclipses are eclipsing in and out and what Mercury retrograde and the eclipses are restricting or not. Okay? Venus conjunct Neptune in Pisces. We're going to talk about the Sun conjuncting the North Node tomorrow. Venus conjunct Neptune in Pisces. One of the questions that I received from a number of you is, why do I keep saying that in 2014, 15, 16, there was a crisis in the sign of Pisces and it keeps brewing? I say that because it has been through my readings of individual charts that something kept coming up again and again and again that made me look at the transits of the South Node eclipses through Pisces, Chiron transiting through Pisces, and Neptune transiting through Pisces at around, and I say 14, 15, 16 because it's an escalating situation. But really, what I'm talking about, things getting to a peak, is around 2016 and even 2017. There was something about astrology. There's a narrative to astrology. After 1617, for a couple of years, the Mercury retrogrades were in water signs, and we would have Mercury going retrograde in Pisces. Then Jupiter came into Pisces. Now Saturn is in Pisces. Then the North Node eclipses are going to move into Pisces. Then Saturn and Neptune are going to move out of it into Aries at roughly the same time, hand in hand, in early 2026. I can't think of another sign necessarily that's been receiving this kind of, as a result of which the house occupied by the sign of Pisces in our chart has just been it's a little bit like where we are at right now. You don't always have situations where you have the North Node eclipses moving back from Taurus to Aries and Jupiter around the same time moving from Aries to Taurus. That's not going to happen again So when the two most expansive transits occur in two parts of the chart consecutively, then you've got to think that for an extended period of time, the Aries and the Taurus part of the chart, wow, there's really been something going on there that's pulling us forward and keeping us going for a longer period of time than normal. Usually you'll have the eclipses go through a certain part of the chart in over a year and a half. You'll have Jupiter go through a part of the chart within about 13 months. But you don't have that occur together like this. Chiron and the South Node eclipses in Neptune, peaking in 2016. South Node eclipses asking you to release something that you might be attached to. Behaviors, patterns, attached to how other people associated with that part of the chart, the Pisces part of the chart, should be behaving, who they should be. Neptune creating its fogginess and deception. Chiron trying to heal something. That is a heady mixture, but the heady mixture can be interpreted. Ultimately, it is through looking at charts that you get clear on when you talk to client after client after client, and you are interpreting the Pisces part of the chart, and you end up going, oh my God. And then things calm down for a bit, but every year Mercury goes into Pisces and goes retrograde and conjuncts whichever one of those bodies that is left, at the very least, Neptune. Then Jupiter comes in and is just like ending a 12, 13-year cycle, starting a 12, 13-year cycle. Close enough that you can't ignore it. And for some people, depending on where the Aquarius part of the chart sits, if Aquarius is in the first and Pisces in the second, Aquarius second, Pisces third, Aquarius third, Pisces fourth, seventh or eighth, ninth or 10th, then Saturn entering into Aquarius and Jupiter entering into Pisces, again, kind of focus on the same theme or the same issues. So it's, and then of course, Jupiter left to go into Aries and then Taurus, but then Saturn then finally came into Pisces, which I've rejoiced over because it's a part of, as I said, we kind of need Saturn's energy to just go, can the chaos stop, please? And can we get our act together? With Neptune's transit, as I have said, it is one of two things, largely. Either you're pursuing something artistic and inspiring and being driven by your muses, or something spiritual and renunciatory, in which case, wonderful, the Neptune transit will be, and if that resonates with you and it's part of your life path, that's a wonderful thing to have. Or Neptune is creating a loss through deception. Or if you've got Pisces in your first, second, or third house, you've got to ask yourself the question as to whether you are being Neptunian. And holding your cards close to your chest. And with Neptune, the loss that is created through a lack of clarity, a lack of detail, a feeling that you're being stolen from, and you kind of might be, or a feeling that facts are not presented to you correctly, or someone is being gaslighty, or it's not, gaslighting is a part of it. Someone is being deceptive. And then because we're dealing with that energy in that part of the chart, we can get to a place where we just can't see. Everything is then seen through a cloudy lens. And we can become really kind of paranoid and worked up about that part of the chart, because anything that comes to us that seems remotely related to it, we feel we can't trust. It's a very heady, stressful mixture. Saturn's presence there is helpful. Now, this year, Saturn came in 2023. In 2024, we've really got the personal planets as they're transiting through Pisces, conjuncting, of course, Saturn and then Neptune. The sun has already done this. We are still for another week in the Pisces month, the Pisces new moon month. I know there's a lot of energy building in Aries. I know there's a lot of energy building in Taurus. We know this. All the energy is in the Pisces, Aries, and Taurus part of our chart anyway, at this point in time, for the most part, apart from Pluto and Aquarius, which we can't ignore, but we've got Mars, Saturn, Venus, Neptune, Pisces. The Sun, a retrograde Mercury, Chiron, North Node in Aries, and Jupiter and Uranus conjuncting on April 20th, 21st. The aspect that is kind of crowning these eclipses on March the 25th and April the 8th. With Venus conjuncting Neptune tomorrow, if you have been planning to go in a Neptunian direction, artistically, spiritually, wonderful. Look to the past 5 odd days and see how in the Pisces part of your chart, the house occupied by Pisces, what it stands for, whoever sits there, that inspiration has hit you, how finances and relationships can be marshaled into taking you into a Neptunian direction. Music, the arts, the muses, inspiration, spiritual renunciation, fabulous. You've been wanting to go in this direction. How have you been inspired to either pursue financial or relationship opportunities? Wherever Venus spends time, she does bring a certain generosity and flow. I, for one, am okay with Venus going into Aries on April the 5th, because I think we need Venus's energy in Aries to help out with the Mercury retrograde and the eclipses. We want more opportunities to come through to help us sort out what I said in the first half of this video with Mercury retrograde and the eclipses. What are my options? Give me more options. Let me show up to more options, universe, so you can tell me which doors are going to open and which doors are going to close. And what do I need to know that it's my blind spot? But then there's the Pisces part of the chart saying stabilize, either brings, if the Neptune transit is inspiring to you and is propelling you to move in an artistic direction or spiritual direction, stabilize those plans. Get real about them. Fulfill your highest potential in that direction based on the opportunities that Saturn is going to give you and the work that Saturn is going to make you do around your self-sabotaging tendencies to build a strong foundation in the Pisces part of the chart by the beginning of 2026. If you're dealing with a crisis, and I have explained to you now, I have tried to answer that question with regard to why I say that as we were going through 2014, 15, 16, peaking in 2016, I have noted there's been an energy leak in the Pisces part of the chart that we have just not been able to get on top. And it's just the sequence of planets going through that part of the chart. There's no other part of the chart. The Aquarius part of the chart, in conversation with the Pisces part of the chart, there's been something there depending on where those two houses sit in your chart. But there's been no other part of the chart that has just been, and it's because it starts with that Chiron Neptune South Node eclipse. Oof. What needs to be released? What do we need to move away from? What would be foggy potentially? What needs to be healed? What sort of wounds are we feeling as we try and heal them? Very heady mixture. Very heady mixture. And for those people who are experiencing this kind of deception focus, wow. Wouldn't know what hit you, kind of, you know. It's like the universe just came and put this blindfold and turned you around 10 times and you were just like, what wheel? What pig? What pin? What? I'm talking about that game that people play. You know what I mean. Where am I going? What's going on? We've been sort of blindfolded since then. And Mercury came in and we're retrograde and it's just like, and then Jupiter and then Saturn now and the North Node eclipses. And I'm, as I said, I'm relieved to have. And if you've been dealing with this kind of, Saturn helps provide structure to Neptunian goals, but Saturn also reveals and helps reveal what is real and what has been going on in this part of the chart. And Saturn also provides lessons, a karmic reckoning, what you could have done, what you did not do, and which is why where things are. And also Saturn encourages you to take responsible actions in the Pisces part of the chart to build a strong foundation for yourself there, to manage the crisis or crises. What house is occupied by Pisces in your chart? And is it one crisis or is it multiple crises? And if it's goals that you're getting to, wonderful. Saturn will help you stabilize them. It's not gonna, Saturn's gonna be like rapping your knuckles every time you do something that does not honor yourself, that does not make you responsible to your fullest potential. But at least it's providing that stabilization and structure. Venus conjuncting Neptune, I've already talked about. If it is artistic or spiritual, great. Look to the last 5 odd days and see how relationship-wise, financially, artistically, creatively, inspiration-wise, opportunity-wise, something may have come up that perks you up, that picks you up, that is worth exploring. If you've been dealing with something on the deceptive side, it would not surprise me at all if this feels like deja vu. Venus conjunct Neptune is your classic. Watch your wallet. Watch your relationships. Watch your pockets. Because someone may be going for it again. The beauty this time around, with Saturn having been in Pisces since March 2023, with Mercury going retrograde around this time, energetically, with Mars having come into Pisces and getting ready to conjunct Saturn next week and Neptune by the end of April, is that at this point in time, you are going to be much less inclined to let someone get away with it. Because Neptune is involved, whoever or whatever you're dealing with who might be doing this kind of gaslighting, deception, feeding you a lot of bullshit stuff, with the Mercury retrograde, It may be one of those situations where you didn't kind of want to believe everything, but it's here. And you may be dealing with someone who's a bit of a master. And so you might decide with Saturn in this part of the chart to up your own mastery. And Saturn does not reward emotional reactivity. But Saturn also does not reward weak or poor boundaries. What Saturn does reward is mature, responsible actions. Belief in yourself, in your ability to handle any situation, in your ability to be effective. Make sure your intentions are clear and clean. Get still. If you need to reach out to certain resources to help you with this process, mastery, leadership, wisdom, maturity, boundaries. With Venus conjuncting Neptune, it's a little bit like someone is putting their hand in your pocket and may have got a grip on your wallet. With Mars following in and making those conjunctions starting next week, you have what you need to get a hold of that hand and that wrist. With Mars conjuncting Saturn and then eventually Neptune. I'm glad Venus is moving into Aries, but it's been nice to have Venus in Pisces over the past 2.5 weeks because she has sweetened things, even though she's had to meet up with Saturn and now with Neptune. With Venus gone after April the 5th, and with just Mars there conjuncting, Mars conjuncting Saturn is no joke. Both in terms of Saturn slowing down any rash or impulsive behavior or aggressive behavior on our part, but also from a positive standpoint, Mars conjunct Saturn, building and executing that foundation in the Pisces part of the chart. So constructive to have Mars conjunct Saturn if you really want to get something done wisely and put your energy in the right mature direction. It is time with Venus conjuncting Neptune, as I said, and you can look to the last 5 days or so. So if the Neptune transit through Pisces has inspired artistic or spiritual activity, great, enjoy the inspiration. If it is tackling the crisis that I have been talking about in the Pisces part of the chart that you're being asked to stabilize with Saturn's presence there, and to some extent, you're going to start during the second half of this year with the North Node eclipses moving into Pisces. Venus conjunct Neptune gives you a sense that if there's a gift or a financial opportunity or a relationship opportunity in the Pisces part of the chart, and it is under threat again, and that is that much clearer to you because Saturn's presence in Pisces will counteract the fogginess that so far has been effectively used to delude you. Then use the upcoming Mars aspects but also pay attention to your own self-sabotaging tendencies. Remember, Saturn is now in Pisces, and Saturn is helping you and teaching you how to be effective in the Pisces part of the chart. Clean and clear intentions. How to be good and effective in that part of the chart. Chances are that what you will need to do to build that strong foundation and to counter anything that feels not only deja vu, it might even feel that much more escalated, because you're going to be so sensitive and so clear now about what is actually going on. It's going to be so unmistakable what someone may be trying to do that feels deceptive. That you are going to be asked to execute your ability to counter that by using behaviors that you have not had the skill or the ability to use prior to 2024. That is what Saturn will help you do. Now, if you've got Pisces in the first, second, third parts of your chart, and you're the one who's been doing a certain amount of smoke and mirrors action, examine and think about where that has got you. And whether you really still want to continue in that direction. Because it might be that with Saturn's presence in this part of the chart, that you can see the necessity, the impulse, the positivity of acting in a more responsible and structured and cleaner and clearer way. And you might be able to see that the results of that kind of Neptunian behavior on your part, it may have led to some results, but the results are not what you it's unlikely that the results would be what you were expecting. Even though so much of the expansiveness is present in the Aries and the Taurus part of the chart, we cannot, during the month of April, ignore the Pisces part of the chart. The Mars conjunctions with Saturn, the Venus conjunction with Neptune tomorrow, and the Mars conjunction. Shall I give you the dates for these conjunctions one more time? It's the last thing I want to do before I let you guys go. The Mars conjunction with Saturn is on April the 10th, and then Mars conjuncts Neptune on April the 29th, and April the 30th, Mars enters its home sign of Aries. April is really going to stretch us thin. We're going to need those hangman moments of really paying attention. But I don't care if we've got 8 planets in one part of the chart and Mars in one part of the chart. Wherever Mars goes, our energy goes. Our testosterone goes. Our yang male pursuing goals, protecting what we think is valuable, protecting that Venus. Venus conjuncts Neptune, Mars comes in and goes and sits down with Saturn next week. And then Mars comes in and with Neptune on the 29th, which you kind of have to watch out for. Again, with Mars, remember, channel that Mars energy with Saturn and Neptune's presence there as wisely. Mars is the general. Mars is the soldier, but Mars is the commander. Mars is the strategist. Mars is, if you want to view the Pisces part of your chart as a bit of a battlefield, then channel Mars's energy with Saturn's indomitable strategic intelligence. Assertive in the right ways, not rash, not aggressive. Because with that Mars-Neptune energy, if your behavior is somehow at fault, then that Neptune can just do a number on you in terms of deception. It's one of those things where you can be totally right about losing your cool or losing your crap. But what someone Neptunian will do is point to you and say, this person has no composure. This person is this. This person is that. This person can't be worked with. This person yelled. This person is violent. This person is, and you know, someone can spin that in such a way that the truth of why it is that you lost your composure will get obscured by the smoke and mirrors about how you need to be put in a straitjacket and taken away because you just are losing it. And so channel Mars's energy wisely so that you're not a bull in a china shop. Mars is famously not entirely comfortable or happy in a sign like Pisces. You know, it's like all that Mars energy in this watery sign. That actually might work to our benefit this time around. It might be that we need a slightly more, as long as it does not cool down Mars's fire to such an extent that we're not pursuing goals to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart, and we're not protecting ourselves and asserting our boundaries where we need to. As long as it doesn't completely, you know, it's like water and fire. As long as the water doesn't douse the fire out, it might temper, you know, Mars taking a swim and expending its energy through swimming as an exercise might actually be a really effective way for it to strategically get from point A to point B, to go underwater when it needs to swim the waves, to let it cool down some of its aggressiveness, and still strategically achieve what it needs to achieve. So if the Venus-Neptune conjunction over the past 5-6 days has been inspiring you and you want to go in an artistic, spiritual direction, great, awesome, fabulous, wonderful aspect for that. If you're feeling like, someone is up to no good, or I am up to no good, again, in this Neptunian way, then know that this time around, you will be more aware of it with Saturn there. And know that with Mars following close behind, you have April to either check the other party or check yourself. Sun conjuncts North Node on the 4th. That's going to be my next video tomorrow. I've already given you a sense of the week ahead. And the Sun conjuncting North Node in Aries, of course, you know, think about the last few days and see how, anyway, I'll talk about that tomorrow. And then, of course, we need to talk about that new moon solar eclipse on the 8th. If you are interested in getting a reading with me or inquiring about rates, my email address is in the description area below, so you can contact me there and I can give you the relevant information. If you found this video useful, tell your friends about it, share the information by all means, subscribe to my YouTube channel, click on the bell icon next to the subscribe button and the wiggly bell on top. If you click on that bell icon, there's a wiggly bell, and if you click on that, you'll be notified when I do new videos. And by all means, like the video and comment on it. All of that increases circulation so this information can reach a wider audience. If you feel like doing so, my thanks as always to the people who do so. I really am grateful for the growth this channel has kind of gone through since January. I met and talked to some wonderful folks through this channel growing. It has been a real treat. So, and I mean that sincerely, and I think you know it. So thank you for that. And until the next video, I hope this gives you some food for thought.